Chapter 8 of Deadwood Dick. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Kirsten Ferreri. Deadwood Dick's Doom, or Calamity Jane's Last Adventure, by Edward L. Wheeler. Chapter 8. Who Killed Piute Dave? When the dwarf was out of sight, the unknown turned to Red Hatchet and gazed at him a moment silently. "You are like the rest of your red race, a demon," he said finally, with biting sarcasm. "I'd be doing your child an act of mercy, you old snake, if I threw you into that fire and allowed you to burn to a crisp." "Oh, no, no!" Siska cried pleadingly. "Don't do that, sir. He is my father, and getting old. Please spare him for my sake." "For your sake, then, be it. For I can but remember that I am under deep obligations to you," the unknown said, bowing. Siska looked surprised. "The daughter of Red Hatchet is grateful to the dark stranger," she said, "but does not understand why he feels under obligations to her." "Nor is there need that she should," the unknown replied. "In the meantime beware of the mad dwarf, and if he again offers to trouble you, shoot him on the spot." With the parting injunction, the man of mystery turned and strode from the cabin, out into the early gloaming of the night. Calamity Jane had overheard the conversation between Mrs. Morris and Carol Carner, for it so chanced that her room adjoined that of the Mormon schemer, and there being only a thin board partition, every word that had been spoken came distinctly to her. "I will enlist this woman against the Mormon villain," she said, "and I allow he'll find his hands full." She went downstairs into the bar-room to see if the California lady was there, but found that she was not. There was a big crowd of the miners and roughs present, however, among whom was Piute Dave and the bullwhacker poet Shakespeare. The latter had evidently been indulging in a goodly number of bootlegs, for he was catering to the tastes of the crowd by some very queer antics in a terpsichorean line. "Dance?" he roared, with an extra shuffle. "Why, galoots, you'd never see your Uncle wiggle his number 13. I'm a regular old ballet when I get going, on single business, and when you give me a feminine gal of good looks, why, old Chesterfield was nowhere with his idears o' exquisite grace. Just to show you, for instance, my festive royal old kids, here's them Calam from Calanardyville. She won't mind trying a mazurky with me, I know." And he waltzed toward where Calamity had paused, bent on forcing her into a dance with him. But just as he reached her, his eyes became glued upon a little instrument she held in her grasp, which mildly suggested trouble did he advance further. So he halted. "Why don't you come on?" Calamity asked drily. "Surely you're not afraid of such a little tool as this." "But great Jerusalem, you'd let me have it right in the buzzum. I'd seed it in your eye." "Well, I 'low you're a pretty fair guesser, for I shall shoot you, Kerslap, if you lay one of your greasy paws on me." "But you'd get yanked for that." "Not while I can handle a 6. "Then you calculate you're a shootist, do you, right from Shootinville?" "I do that same. I presume I am most generally able to look out for number 1. "But you can't shoot. No siree, bobtail hoss. That ain't no mortal that can shoot compared with your uncle, the playful poet of the plains. Why, would you believe it, gal, I'm the first patentee of revolvers, I am, and I can outshoot any pilgrim from Carver down to the days of David Crockett." "I'll bet you can't," Calamity retorted. She saw that to gain the admiration and respect of these rude men she must surprise them by some extraordinary proceeding, and there is no accomplishment that tickles a Western man so much as an exhibition of perfect marksmanship. In this Calamity was not to be despised, for she had handled weapons too many years not to be well acquainted with their use. "I bet you can't knock the neck off a bottle 30 yards off." "Oh, Daniel in the lion's den! What foolishness! Why, gal, for shootin' class I'm noted. I'm the 'ristocratic, bloated, their party sugar-coated, pop-gun puller of the West. Why, I can toss a liquor glass into the air and plunk a hole through the bottom afore it comes down." "You can't do it," Calamity declared, pulling out her purse, "and I'll bet just a gold eagle agin it. Then I'll turn around and bet that if you can do that, I can take a revolver and put the bullet down the tube of a narrow-necked bottle while it's in the air." A cheer of enthusiasm came from the crowd at this assertion of the girl sport, while the poet looked rather nonplussed as he surveyed his opponent. "Well, dog my cats, if you can do that, there's a heap more nerve in you than you ink for. I'll jest bet you square 50 gold bar that you can't do nothin' of the kind." Take him, first dose. Put up your collateral. Poker Jack will hold the stakes." The bullwhacker was in earnest, and put up his 3-ouncer in Jack's hands forthwith, while Calamity handed him 5 eagles, and the bet was made. "Now then, go ahead and prove your brag," Shakespeare cried with a grin. "And when I get your 50, cuss my golden slippers if I don't treat their boys to the best that house affords. Oh, I'm a liberal cuss." "So I perceive. And when you win a wager on my shooting, you'll need to bet the other way." Calamity laughed. "You pilgrims get to either side now, and leave the center of the room clear for its whole length, so that nobody shall get hurt. It would be a great pity to harm so respectable an assemblage. I could never forgive myself were I to kill half a dozen of you. Now then, you bullwhacker, procure empty bottle and stand halfway down the room to the right side, and when I give the word, toss the bottle up in the air, the neck toward me. I will take my position at the upper end of the room here, and if you bottle as I order, I'll agree to put a bullet down the neck so that it will come out the bottom. Get ready now." Her orders were promptly obeyed. The crowd moved to one side, and she and Shakespeare took their respective positions. "Gentlemen, you want to peel your eyes now," the bullwhacker said, feeling considerable uneasiness as to the result of his wager. "A gal of starlin' qualities this gal Calam may be, but it won't do nary harm to watch her very close, you see. Therefore peel your eyes and peel 'em good and watch her little game, 'cause for me to lose my ducats, boys, it'd be a beastly shame. Selah! Come, girl, you ready?" "Not yet," Calamity answered, taking her position. "The light in the room is so bright that it dazzles my eyes. Will someone tie a handkerchief over one of my eyes? You, Poker Jack?" The host of the poker house assented, and according to directions effectually blindfolded the left eye of the eccentric girl daredevil. "Now then, 1, 2, 3, she cried, and raising her revolver before she had 3. The instant she muttered the momentous word, the bullwhacker tossed a long-necked bottle in the air, as directed, with a "Ki-yi!" The next instant there was a loud report, a smashing of glass, a yell of human pain. Down to the floor fell the bottle with the bottom knocked out. Down to the floor fell Piute Dave, grasping at his side, from which a stream of blood was oozing, dyeing the floor. Calamity had won her wager, and Piute Dave had lost his life. Had one bullet done it all? That was a question unanswerable by any present, as all eyes had been riveted upon the bottle as it whirled through the air. It had all occurred in an instant, and brought surprise to everyone, even Calamity, who heard the fall. "I'm killed! The cursed girl in breeches did it!" Piute Dave gasped, blood spurting from his mouth as he spoke. "Kill her, someone! Cut her heart out!" "Back!" Calamity cried, tearing the handkerchief from her eyes and levelling her recocked weapon at the crowd. "This is a lie! I did not shoot that man! Look at the bottle! There is a hole through it! You will at once see that I could not have done both jobs with one bullet." "You lie! You lie!" Piute Dave yelled, raising frantically upon his elbow, and attempting to draw his revolver, but the exertion was more than he was capable of, and he dropped back upon the floor, dead. For a moment thereafter, the silence in the room was so intense that a pinfall could have been heard. Then Poker Jack spoke. "The gal's right, boys," he said decidedly. "She could not have bored that hole through the end of the bottle and killed Dave too." "A gal who's clever enough to chuck cold lead into the throat of a bottle when it was tumbling sumbersets in the air, and enough possessed of the devil to do most anything, I allow," declared an old miner, with a grunt of disapproval, and this view of the matter also seemed to meet a favourable response from his companions. "It's a big thing to do, of course," Poker Jack assented. "But look, yonder's a splinter in the door at the other end of the room that shows where the bullet went after going through the bottle." An exclamation confirmed his declaration. A bullet was lodged in the door in plain view in a spot where the door had hitherto been unmarred. "That don't settle the question, however," a voice cried, and Carol Carner, who had been standing since the shooting in the doorway that opened into the hall, now advanced into the bar-room. "I've got a little finger to intrude in this pie." "Well, what have you got to say?" Calamity demanded, turning fiercely upon him, for from his voice she knew he was the same man who was dealing so villainously with Mrs. Morris. "I have this to say," he replied with a triumphant smile, "that while all other eyes were turned upon the bottle, mine were upon you, and I saw you fire 2 revolvers instead of 1. One was levelled at the dead man here, the other at the bottle, and both exploded simultaneously, making one report." "My God, what a lie!" Calamity Jane gasped. Then, "Back! Back, you devils!" as the crowd rushed at her, and she opened rapid fire upon them with 2 revolvers, resolved to sell her life and liberty dearly. But there were 100 to 1. What could be the result? They had secured her in the hard, unyielding grasp of a dozen pairs of hands, in almost a moment, but not until her unerring aim had sent 4 strong men upon their backs, and several others wounded. "Out with her! String her up!" roared the bullwhacker poet, who had been one of those to sustain a scratch in the face. "Yes, give the murderous hussy a rope!" cried Carol Carner. "She deserved it long ago." "Hold! Pause before you do this outrage!" a deep, stern voice cried, and there entered the room the same strange, black-bearded stranger whom we have known as the Unknown. He had no weapons in his hand to stay the mob that had Calamity Jane in their power. It was the commanding tone of voice, and his dark, forbidding appearance that caused the rude crowd to pause and await an explanation of his advent. "Stop!" he repeated. "This girl belongs to me to kill. I have a mortgage upon the life you would take, and I propose to attend to the foreclosure myself. Still, realizing your revengeful spirit toward her, I will give you a chance to win her for your own disposal. Select some man from your crowd who is an expert at knife throwing, and we will throw 6 knives apiece at a round chalk mark the size of a silver dollar on yonder door, while standing 20 paces from the aforesaid door. The man who puts the most knives nearest the chalk center shall have the girl." "That's me every day in the week, you bet!" cried the poet, executing a ludicrous caper. "Right on my muscle air I at tossin' knives, way up ter the shoulder. There bees know who I am, and that my specialty is that, and compilin' beautiful gems of poetry. Hey, boys, shall we have a little of their blady amusement?" Piute Dave lay dead upon the floor. These men of Death Notch looked next after him to Shakespeare as their leader, and gave a growl of assent. "It is well," the Unknown said, "for had you refused you would never have escaped from this place alive, as it is in my power to strike every one of you dead at a single blow." It was a bold declaration, but it had its effect. The crowd cowered in superstition from the gaze of this dark, forbidding stranger. "Go ahead and collect a dozen bowie knives, and also mark a dollar-sized circle on yonder door, belt high. Then pace off 20 steps and lead off," the stranger commanded. Shakespeare followed the instructions promptly, and then, armed with his allowance of knives, took his position. It was now to be a test of skill for the life of Calamity Jane, who was still held a prisoner. End of chapter 8.